That's our friend Kathy Helbig joining us live from New York. Normally we have you in studio from Experience Realty Partners. You're in New York for a conference. What's going on with the real estate industry in New York?
I am. So this is the most exciting conference of the year. It's the premier real estate tech conference. So, all the big economists, all the CEOs of all the huge brokerages are all here. So it's really fun to just kind of sit here and get to be a part of that. And I'm always a student of the industry. I'll never stop being a student of the industry. So I get excited about these things. So basically, yesterday was kickoff. Most of the people on stage had, I would say, a cautiously optimistic view of 2023 with where real estate is concerned. They did say it is one of the hardest years to predict. So everybody's putting an asterisk by what they're saying, basically. But the upsides were that mortgage applications are up 20%. So now that they feel inflation is mostly behind us, we're seeing rates come back down a little bit. Home buyers are coming out. Builder sentiment is up. Days on the market are down. Home prices are increasing again a little bit. So those are all positive indicators that we're moving into a better real estate market than what we saw this fall. Somebody referred to this fall as the buyers went on strike, and I thought that was pretty felt like that. So they're back. They're back to work.
I love hearing that, Kathy. When you were here last time, I had hoped we would get to it. We'll have to get to it today. Speaking of buyers, when you're out looking for real estate, when I go on the different web pages and I'm looking at listings, I see that a lot of homes are marked as contingent.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people I talk to say, well, if they're contingent, that means they're off the market. I have zero chance. And I think people miss out on opportunities by thinking that way. And I'm just curious if you can explain to people exactly what contingency means and the different types of contingency.
So when you see contingent, and every website is a little bit different. Some will say pending or off market. Some will say contingent. What you don't see as the consumer is what is it contingent on. So the little bit better view from our MLS data, as long as it's been marked correctly. And typically it will give us some sort of indication of what that contingency is. So depending on what it is, falls on the spectrum of, do you have a chance in HE-double, or do you not have a chance as a buyer to still have an opportunity at this house? So for instance, what I see on my side on contingent, there's contingent under contract, there's contingent with a kick out, and contingent without a kick out. A kick out means the seller has some sort of mechanism built into the contract that would allow them to have some control of possibly ending that first contract. So if you're a buyer, that's one that I would still consider contingent with a kick out, because a mainstream example of that would be a home sale contingency. So that's typically, most of the ones that we see but not all of them, and I'll explain that in a minute, but most of the ones you see that are contingent with a kick out, they typically want to continue to show. Now, not every seller does, but most should and would want to continue to show that house. The problem is the consumer isn't educated. Buyer agents or agents, sometimes they don't want to waste their time with them, because there's still a good percentage of time that's not going to go through for their buyer. So instead of distracting them or getting their heart set on something that they might not be able to have, agents sometimes will kind of try to go away from those, which personally I don't think you should. To me, I look at, if somebody already bought it, then it was good enough for somebody else to love. Basically, just to go a little deeper with home sale contingent contracts, that kick out clause for a seller, this is why a lot of people don't understand the process. If you are a buyer that makes an offer on a home that is contingent on your home selling and closing, then generally that form in your offer has a little paragraph in there that says seller's option. Seller has the option at any time, for any reason, to give the buyer blank amount of hours to remove your home sale contingency, or this contract is terminated. So you can take a buyer's offer A buyer's typically going to write in 60 to 90 days closing, give me time to get my house on the market, get it under contract, and get it closed. So I'm going to put everything on with you on hold while I do that. And a lot of sellers go, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking my house off the market for 90 days and not be able to sell it. But really, in essence, as a seller, you're not committed to that contract for any longer than the blank hours that you put in, which is typically 24, 48, or 72 hours. So 48 is the norm that we see. So 2 days, you're giving this buyer time to get his house on the market. What if he goes under contract in 3 days? Then everybody's a happy camper, you're moving forward. But if for some reason he doesn't, or you see the pictures come up and you're like, oh my God, I had no idea this is the house that they have to sell before they can buy my house, you get cold feet, or you get another offer that comes in that you want to take, or you just change your mind. You can, in writing, notify the buyer, hey, your 48 hours is starting right now. If you don't remove your home sale contingency, then at the end of 48 hours, I'm free to sell the house and do what I want with this house. So you're really only locked in for as long as that seller's option. But you do have to realize if the buyer does take off that home sale contingency before those 48 hours, he does continue on with the contract. So we've had, a few occasions where somebody gets in under a buyer contingency like that, and then a better offer comes in. Let's say it's $20,000 higher. So you're like, I want to push that buyer out and take this second offer. If buyer number one firms up, buyer number one keeps the contract at the contract terms, moving forward all the way to closing. That makes
It
sense.
is interesting. Heck yes, it does. That's why I would call you. I was like, I would never try to attack
Yeah.
this by myself, of course.
So
And
then
this- a person
another
can't do
risk
this.
for a seller, with that, because I don't want to say there are times it makes sense as a seller to take a contract like that. But you also have to keep in mind that you are taking it contingent on their sale and successful closing. So you can go all the way to the closing table, had a pretty smooth deal. Everybody negotiates their building inspections, because you got to remember, you got to wait for your buyer to get through inspections, your buyer's buyer to get through inspections, you to get through appraisal, your buyer's buyer to get through appraisal, loan commitment, same thing. So it's double the people that have to jump through all those hoops. And then let's say you get to closing and somebody gets in a terrible car accident. Somebody decides they're getting a divorce in the process and they just go, not closing. If you're the seller that took the contract that was contingent upon the buyer's sale and closing, then that buyer is not obligated to you if their deal fell through. So you're kind of the one at the end of the line, maybe left holding the bag. I haven't seen it happen a million times. I've seen it happen occasionally that it doesn't go through, but a lot of the times they go through. So if you're getting much better terms because the person came to the table asking for you to make it contingent on their home sale, maybe weigh out the risks.
We're talking with Kathy Helbig of Experienced Real Estate Partners. When you were gone, when you were trying to reconnect,
Yes.
I said I think it's amazing because you were talking about how you're in New York right now, getting continuing education, continuing to educate yourself. I hadn't met anybody, at least in my life, that knows more about real estate than you. And I compared you to Chris Berman from ESPN. He's one of the best sports broadcasters of all time.
Chris.
He still has a coach, Kathy. He still has a talent coach. Tom Brady still has a QB coach that he talks to learn how to throw a ball. This is why it's so important, which is why we trust you. And if anybody has questions, they contact Kathy at 314-276-SOLD, 314-276-7653. Another big topic you wanted to cover today was foreclosure, something that I don't know if people think they know about it or don't know about it, but I think we're going to find out right now.
Yes. So somebody had brought up last week during the show, I think it was a listener sent a Facebook message through or something about foreclosures. And, I will go on record. I am not a foreclosure specialist. And there's a reason why I'm not a foreclosure specialist is they're kind of a pain in the butt. So everybody, has the pie in the sky idea of when they're getting in the market, let's go buy a foreclosure. I'm going to get a great deal. And I can tell you there are some deals out there to be had, but typically it's not going to the uneducated buyer that's a one-off buyer. Like there's relationships out there with real estate agents and just investors mostly with banks. So they'll hear about these foreclosures before they even hit the block. There's foreclosures that are at the courthouse steps. Those are the most challenging as a novice because you've got to make a decision right then and there on the steps. If you're buying the house, you've got to have cash or line of credit to close. And you don't get all these contingencies of, well, let me go do an inspection now that I bought the house. Like you've got to be ready to go. You've already needed to see the house. There's no contingencies on inspections. Also, I think a myth that people think with foreclosures is that they think they're going to get a smoking deal. Mm-hmm. It all depends on what the consumer owed when they went under water, when they stopped making payments to the bank. So what does the bank have into it? In a market like the one we just had, a bank's not just going to go sell it for what they have into it. They're going to go put it on the market, try to make market rate for it. Most of the time they're going to get it because we're low on inventory, even if it wasn't in great shape the last couple of years. So some of those foreclosure homes are not selling for a huge amount under market. A lot of times banks will even take it into inventory, which are called REOs. They take those into inventory. Sometimes they'll put the paint and wallpaper down and put in carpet and then go and make money on those houses. So if you are thinking about wanting to jump into foreclosures, I would definitely align with either an investor coach or an agent that does a lot of foreclosures, because it is definitely tricky water to navigate.
It sounds like it. And I think you're right, Kathy. I think a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to get a $100,000 house for $30,000, and then I'm going to hurry up and able to flip it or rent it out. And I know it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yes.
Now, I know you're at a conference. What are you learning? What are you learning new there?
Well, exciting. So it's kind of funny. It's a little bit surreal this year. I'm coming full circle because I've been coming to this conference. I think this is my 22nd year, pretty much not soon after they came up with this conference. And it's twice a year. There's one in New York. There's one that was always in San Francisco. They just moved to Las Vegas the last couple of years because it's becoming so big. But the big players are here, like the $1 Million Listing folks. Mauricio's here. We sat next to Mauricio, his girls, So, but I get to take the main stage this time for the first. I was on stage one other time before on a startup app that I was involved with, but today I get to take the main stage, so it's kind of full circle. My husband,
your cheering section. What is your topic? My
topic is on the shifting market, how to navigate through a shifting market, because we are dealing with sellers that their head's still in last year and they're kind of in a fog. And because I'll say experienced, it also means old. Because I've been around for so long, I lived through the first real estate crash. I got in the business in 1997. So I kind of had this happen before real estate market was going up. And then boom, we hit, the crisis with the subprime loans and everything that was happening there. And so I navigated those waters from 2008 to about 2011, similarly to kind of the quick change that we're dealing with in our market now. So they asked me to come and speak to, what did I learn from the last market that we can help people shorten their learning curve this market, so they don't have to put their head in the sand and learn the hard way, which is what sellers did back then. The other thing, Tabitha, that I thought was interesting, and I want to dive a little deeper into, and I definitely want to talk about it on one of our upcoming shows, but I thought it was interesting. I sat on about an hour's worth of what's happening coming down the pike with the financial sector. And there was a couple of people on stage that were talking about, they have programs coming out now, but they're trying to institutionalize. I know this is going to set Eric off. Institutionalize regular home ownership, just like the institutions have come in and bought up the properties for rentals. They're looking at potentially having options for sellers to where I don't know if I can explain it properly without diving deep, but basically they're buying shares of people's houses. So you don't have to move. You don't have to take out a home equity line of credit. You're not incurring more debt. The way they're spinning it is, we're in it with you, the ups or the downs of the market. We're now an investor in your home with you, and you can take out a lump sum amount of money that you need to then go pay off short-term debt, credit cards, how colleges for kids, student loans, car debt, those type of things. So I thought that was kind of an interesting segue into now we're looking at people that are going to be tapping into homeowners equity. They said 50% of homeowners have more than 50% equity in their house. That's untapped.
Right. Now, is that kind of like a spin on, what do they call that? Reverse mortgage? Something along those lines?
It's not. It's completely different from reverse mortgage. Reverse mortgage, there's definitely some qualifications there, and you've got to have a lot of equity, and there's some negative connotations to reverse mortgage. This is really, there's some similarities, but I know I was dealing with an investor in town that came into St. Louis last year that was targeting senior housing. One story only. They were buying out the seniors completely. In this case, they're only buying a portion of the house, a portion of the equity in the house. They were buying out the seniors completely and then renting the house back to them for as long as they want.
I've heard about a lot about that.
Yeah. And, they had some success. They came in when the market went a little crazy. So it was, probably not as many as they planned to grab, but we're going to see that coming back as well. So just lots of creative ways to get that equity out of the house and get it into the mainstream.
Kathy, I'm curious if you saw something at the conference before we let you go today. Did you see the report Goldman Sachs released today? They said the 4 U.S. cities, Goldman Sachs predicting 4 U.S. cities are going to suffer a 2008 crash in home values. Did you see that report that they put out yet?
I have not. What were the cities they mentioned?
Well, the cities that they mentioned are San Jose, California, San Diego, California, Austin, Texas, and Phoenix, Arizona. Now, Goldman Sachs' prediction is that you're likely going to see noticeable increases in those home prices before drastic decreases of more than 25% in those 4 cities. That blew me away. Yeah. What do you make of that, hearing it on the spot?
Well, those are the cities that had the fastest growth over the last 2 years. So I'm not surprised by those. I'm surprised that they're saying it's still going to go up a little bit, because I think we're already seeing a little bit of a cooling off in those markets. But again, the buyers were on strike in the fall. That's the cooling off we're seeing, and we are seeing people come back. So maybe they're right. We are going to see a run before it starts to go backwards. Yeah, Austin. Steve was just in. My husband was just in Austin at a real estate conference, and that market is heating back up again.
That's interesting when we see that. Yeah. Anything you want to leave our viewers and listeners with today before we let you get back to the bright lights and big city
Exactly.
lights of New York City?
Woo! And we can.
Steve's quick in the background.
Yeah, I travel with a fan club. No, I want to cover a new contingency every week too. So be thinking about, if you've got any other questions on those. But
I love that because it needs clarification. It's so confusing because there's so many different types of contingencies, and they mean so many different things to buyers versus sellers.
No, they really do. And once again, don't go out and try to do this real estate stuff by yourself. I mean, especially if you're looking at this right now, the markets are changing. They're ever changing right now. It seems as if you really need a lot of education to go out and make sure you're getting the best deal, the best situation.
Let me throw one quick tip out to buyers on that contingency thing too. If you've already sold your house, but you need the equity out of it to close, you're going to write your contract contingent on your successful closing, not on the sale and closing, because it's already under contract, right? So you've already completed that piece. There is a difference in the two typical real estate forms. That seller kickout is not in the buyer, the closing contingency only. So what I caution all my buyers to do is, because a lot of times you are going into it with you having to sell first, to write into the contract, because we've had people get caught in the crosshairs before on these. Write into your contract, if you do have to sell, that once you go under contract, that seller's, again, this is for the buyer's perspective, the seller's kick out deletes from the offer at that point in time. Because what we've had happen before is, somebody's only moving, I'm going to sell my house because I want that house. That's the one I want to move into. So you get under contract with them, and then they get notified, and then you sell your house. So now you got a buyer. And then guess what? Somebody comes in and offers that guy $50,000 more, and he goes, see ya, even though you're 2 weeks before closing. He can do that. So to
That's a
protect,
really good tip.
and a lot of
Great tip,
people don't know
Kathy.
that tip. So these are the
I
little
had
things.
no
If
idea.
you don't use an agent that's experienced in this kind of stuff, you're going to lose because
Hence
people
the name
haven't been burnt before.
Experience Real
Yes,
Estate Partners.
yes.
Experience Real Estate Partners.
Experience. That's
Experience
right.
Real Estate Partners. Kathy Helbig Strick. The phone number 314-276-SOLD. 314-276-SOLD. Before we let you go, is there a best month to sell your house, Kathy? It was a question that just came in.
So if you're a buyer, best month to buy is January. If you're a seller, the best months to sell are typically June, July.
Perfect. What a great way to end. Tell Steve we said hello. Have a great time in New York. We'll catch up with you
Thanks,
next
guys.
week. And thanks again for the knowledge.